For as long as I can remember, I've been talking about how surfaces, decals, and textures are the most important detailing element in cities. And with the mod support in City Skylines 2, we finally have the ability to add all of these things into our city builds. So today we're going to break down what mods you need to be able to do this, as well as how to use them effectively. First, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below. Have you downloaded any of these mods? Are you checking them out, and what are your thoughts? And let's get to it. So there's a couple parts to this. Decals and surfaces operate differently. Decals are much more like stickers that you place on the ground or on buildings that apply an image, and sometimes those come with transparency that allow you to blend the decal into whatever texture you're applying it to. Decals can be really helpful in adding some sort of diversity in whatever texture you're working with. These can be great when layered in with surfaces, but they can also be applied to buildings, which is a rather new feature implemented with cities too, giving you the ability to place ads on the sides of buildings and graffiti in areas. But I've long used decals for just applying some wear and tear or blending different textures together. Surfaces are going to operate very differently from decals, and they're closer to using Surface Painter from City Skylines 1. These also have some element of transparency, and they sort of have a hierarchy about how they can be layered. While surfaces are just meant to go onto ground texture, it gives you a ton of flexibility in what you can place. For example, if you wanted to add asphalt next to a building, maybe mulch or a different type of grass, this is where surfaces can come in handy. It's also possible to expand the base surface that is applied when you're putting down a building. For example, if the building has grass surrounding it or some sort of pavement, you can now expand that, which is actually a really cool feature added in cities too. Now you can use decals and surfaces together, but I'd recommend using surfaces and leaning on surfaces primarily for large areas and creating that base texture, for which you can then use decals to help customize or blend it into other areas. So what mods are you going to need to do some of this work in your city? Well, to place surfaces along with placing decals and network items, you're going to want extra detailing tools. Now to use EDT, you're going to need a couple of dependencies, including extra lib, which helps seamlessly integrate extra tools into the game. You'll also need Better Bulldozer, which is going to give you way more functionality with the Bulldozer tool. In fact, it's going to allow you to select a ton of different things, including surfaces, decals, and even sub-buildings to buildings that you are placing on your map. You'll also need Anarchy, which is a popular mod within itself. This mod is going to give you the ability to bend the rules of cities too. This will help prevent notifications of overlapping items, and it'll give you a little bit more creative freedom when you're building. Now those are the dependencies, but let's talk about mods to get the surfaces and decals you're going to want into the game. You're going to need Extra Asset Importer, which is going to allow you to import decals and surfaces that are available on PDX mods. For information on future compatibility, I'd highly recommend reading this page, but it also gives you some suggestions on mods to download for additional decals and surfaces. Here's some that I have installed along with the beaches provided by Sully. Now, just a couple of additional things would be extra landscaping tools, something you may remember from Cities 1, which allows you to place resources on your map and gives you some brushes to use. There's also extra networks and areas, which allows you to place invisible roads along with several other features for the more advanced builder. I primarily use it for custom parking lots. But when downloading any mod, please be sure to read the page and make sure you understand that the modders are putting in information out there on not only how to use the mod, what it can do, but also compatibility and suitability moving forward as Cities 2 continues to get updates. Now that we've covered what you need, let's talk about how to use some of these mods. Once you've added extra detailing tools, its dependencies, and maybe some decals or surface packs, you'll see the extra detailing tools icon on the bottom of your UI. You'll see three main categories between decals, surfaces, and Netlanes. Now there's a bunch of subcategories here, including beach decals, parking decals. You would have wall decor decals, alphabet decals, road assets, and stains, amongst others. Simply by clicking on a decal, you are then able to place it on your map, but remember you may want to activate Anarchy to overlap other items or the area around other items, especially buildings or roads. Now a little sidebar, if you are trying to place multiple decals down in some sort of line, Prop Line tool will function with these decals. So if that's another mod that might help you in placing these, you can check that out as well. Next, we need to understand how the snapping options can help you with decals and how Anarchy goes a step further to give you more control over placement. Much like placing just about anything, you're going to have a general snapping option, but the next option will be Snap to Roads, which is going to align the decal somewhere on the road. This can be a little bit finicky to use, especially if you want something just sort of blended in your own placement, but you can always turn it off to place it exactly where you might want. And once you turn it off, the decal won't get stuck to certain spots of the road. Next, we have Snap to Surface of an object, and if it looks incorrect, you need to turn off Snap to Upright. I'll explain that in a second. This will allow you to place posters or any sort of decal on the side of a building or some form of object. And you can rotate these decals by utilizing your left click, either by holding down or clicking to rotate at intervals. Now, snap to upright is basically going to keep the decal facing upright. However, by turning it off on some of these decals, I can then make them into something that we normally use on the ground, and I can apply that to the side of the building. So this actually controls whether it's going to be something you're going to apply to the roof or maybe the side of a building. But again, understanding it may take some time and usage. But with Anarchy, we have an additional menu we need to talk about. I've closed out the Extra Detailing Tools tab, and I've clicked on the decal itself. I can then adjust positioning more specifically utilizing axes. This can be very helpful when adjusting position or rotation of the decal, either on a building, object, or on the ground. By messing with the rotation to a decal, you can also get it to fade into the ground or whatever surface it's attached to. This can be really helpful when blending areas together, especially attached to surfaces that we'll talk about in a minute. And of course, you can always use this panel just to delete the decal if you need to. Now in Extra Detailing Tools, let's take a look at the Surfaces tab. And this should look relatively familiar as it's broken down into subcategories. You'll have everything from sand to ground surfaces, concrete, grass, pavement, and so on. Surfaces are going to be laid down differently than how decals operate. You're going to be placing points down to fill that space. So you're basically drawing out shapes to fill certain areas. Left click will allow you to place a node, while right click will cancel a node placement. You need to complete the shape for the surface to appear filled. Now, if you want to make an adjustment to one of those nodes, you can click and drag it to where you'd rather place it. You can also right click on the node to delete it. And if you delete enough nodes, that surface will disappear. Now, Anarchy is going to come in handy to be able to overlap or place surfaces close to other surfaces. And situationally, of course, snapping options can be very helpful in aligning surfaces against other surfaces or roads and buildings. Now, as I mentioned before, you can make adjustments to the surfaces that come with buildings. By having the Surfaces tab open, you can manipulate surfaces that are already on the map. Here's where I can add nodes to a surface that's pre-existing, even with a building. So what's important to understand is that if you have a surface that's already pre-existing or that you've placed down, you can go in and you can continue to manipulate that surface by adding nodes. But by deleting a bunch of the nodes, you can actually get rid of a surface that's beneath a building and replace it if you'd like. This is obviously allowing you to customize some of your building's landscaping, which is a pretty cool opportunity. From a detailing perspective, this could allow you to add things like grass or mulch into certain areas. Maybe you want to connect buildings with your own pavement, or just do aesthetic things that can fill in city blocks or areas around buildings. Now, if this seems pretty geometric, it kind of is. There are some ways to incorporate curvature, but it is a little more time consuming. You'll first want to turn off snapping, and then you'll want to draw organic lines with your mouse, clicking a little bit more rapidly to create the curvature you desire. This can be a little bit finicky or imperfect, but using decals or other surfaces layered, you can tend to make this work to some capacity. If you take a look at the golf course I started building, you can see that not all the lines are perfect, but you can get an idea for some of that curvature and how to layer things to make it sort of blend together. You can also use things like bushes or pathing to help cover up some of those curved edges. Now, the next thing you should know about surfaces is there is some form of hierarchy to how surfaces work. Some surfaces have an element of transparency, blending the original grass texture in with whatever surface you're using. Whereas some surfaces will just overlap whatever surface you already have down no matter what. For example, on the golf course I'm building, sand will always take priority and overlap whatever grass surface I put down. Whereas if you use Sully's beach textures, you're going to see that the darker beach textures are actually going to overlap the lighter textures. So let's progress through this. You may have some of the patchy sand on top of your grass to help blend your beach into just normal grass. But then you're going to move to dry sand. But as you progress from dry sand over to wet sand, you'll notice that the wet sand will be overlapped on top of the dry sand. I'd recommend checking this out before you build anything very complex with surfaces so you know what layer needs to be on top and what layer needs to sit below. Or you may find some opportunities to blend multiple surfaces together, which is just another layer of customization and detail. Now, if you want to delete a surface you have placed, let me show you how to do that with Better Bulldozer. Just by going down to the icon on the bottom right for removing surfaces, you can click that, highlight the surface, and delete it. Now, I've got to bring up two more things that are attached to Extra Detailing Tools that are going to be pretty helpful for your city build. The third tab on Extra Detailing Tools is Netlanes. The first subcategory is Miscellaneous Netlanes. These are going to be a bit of a variety of items that you can place down, similar to how you used to place down networks in Cities 1 or the way you place down roads. And similar to roads, all these net lanes can be at curved angles. So if you find use for them, you have a ton of flexibility. And just a reminder that these are aesthetic only. You'll have to have other mods and other things going on to be able to have the sims interact with these lines. But whether it's deleting these or any other stuff we're going to talk about in Netlanes, you can always delete them using Better Bulldozer by clicking the Remove Netlane option. The next subcategory is fences. Yes, network fences are available in cities too. You can place these down to set up property lines or just detail generally throughout your city. Prop fences can tend to be a little bit time consuming. This might speed up some of your detailing, and it gives you the ability to do curved lines as well. Now, the next thing under Netlanes is road markings, which obviously leans more towards being able to draw out some of your own roads or pathing for vehicles. This could also help if you want to draw some of your own lines and some intersections, sort of similar to intersection marking tool. Now, again, it'll be aesthetic to begin with, but utilizing extra networks, you can then begin to create pathing for those vehicles. But just in a non-functional sense, let's say you're doing an alleyway, you can always use surfaces to apply the appropriate texture you might want beneath these lines and create your own little streets. Now, I don't really want to get into building your own roads in this video, but I do want to talk about parking lots. Leaning on several elements we've already talked about, including surfaces, decals, fences, you can begin to create parking lots, but you can go a step further and make them functional by using extra networks, a mod we talked about earlier. By going to the landscaping tab and under pathways, you'll have some invisible paths that you can incorporate, one of which has parking. You can set these up simply by drawing a network next to the road. You don't actually have to overlap to create an intersection. You'll just want the green lines connected to the road that you're setting this up against. Or you can use the invisible roadway to connect it to a road if you don't want the parking lot filling up a massive space. Now, as you can see, it's missing a surface, so we can add that again, going back to extra detailing tools. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to draw out a little bit of a surface so you can get an idea for how this will work. The surfaces should not interfere at all because those are just aesthetic. However, the parking lot road we have designed is actually functional. Just remember that the end node of the parking lot needs to be next to whatever road you want it connected to. You want those green lines to sort of be intersecting the sidewalk of the road, and cars will start to utilize the networks you have set up. By disabling parking on a street, you may actually see cars move into the parking lot. This is a nice little project because adding in a lot of the stuff we've talked about, including surfaces and decals, you can make these into very neat little projects in your city. There's plenty more I could cover about detailing, but hopefully this gives you a solid foundation on surfaces, decals, and plenty more that I've included in this video. So if you've made it this far and you're putting some of this in practice, let me know what you are designing with surfaces and decals. Be sure to like the video and hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you next time.